Hello, 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 and welcome back to another season in a new year of the Enricher Business Circle. I'm your host, Rodrika Bennett, and I am super excited to release even more great content for you guys this year of 2026. Today, we have an amazing guest, Stan Gibson, who is going to grace us with his presence and give us a lot of content and motivation and how we can be productive and be people centric. Stan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rodrika. And again, I hope I'm getting your name right. We talked about it before we get on the air, and I think I passed that test. So if I can get that right, hopefully the next 30 minutes is going to go even better.
Also, and yes, Stan, you did get my name correct. So part of the show, we always jump off into the why or the journey of how you could became an entrepreneur or what was your aha moment that made you want to help others. So could you tell us about that?
I've got so many, but I think the aha moment. I always ask people, when was that aha moment that you knew you were going to do what you're going to do? And I grew up in a farming community, and I can remember working on the farm and being on a pig farm, and it was 100 degrees and it was 100% humidity, and it was just the worst day ever. And I said, you know what? I don't know how, but someday I'm going to wear a white shirt. I'm going to go to work and I'm going to have a nice office. And, that was my motivator. And then, kind of to add on to that, I did end up playing college football, and I played at Eastern Illinois University. And I won't get into the full. It's actually part of my keynote when I speak, and it's really an amazing story because I played for a team that went 1-10 my freshman year, and won the national championship just 12 months later. And so we go from 1-10 to national champs. Somebody's doing something right. And when you look at the people centric method that they use to go from 1-10 to national champs, it still comes around people. It's still around people centric, and it's around authenticity. I mean, the coach that they brought in, Rodriguez, he admitted to us he didn't know much about football, and yet his nickname was Dr. Victory. Well, you don't get a name like Dr. Victory if you lose a lot. So just his authenticity, and he brought it. He put people in the right swim lane. He didn't fire everybody from the 1-10 team that we had the year before. He actually brought a lot of them in because they were good coaches, just in a bad system. Same thing with the players. 90% of the players still played. He just put them in different positions to excel. So I always say I learned everything I need to know about people centric leadership in college. It just wasn't in the classroom. So that was kind of my aha moment. And I was able to do that as a football coach for a couple of years before I went into business. And the method works. And so I've been in the corporate environment for 4 decades, and I left 5 years ago. Part of that corporate environment was working for Fortune 250s plus as an entrepreneur.
Mm.
Now I left 5 years ago, and I'm having the time of my life, Rodrigo.
Also, that does sound fun. Sounds fun when you're transitioning and finding that balance in the journey. And I know, like a lot of people, I think we're in a time where a lot of people struggle being people centric, or they think that is going to fade away. So, one, I would like you to kind of define what's your definition of being people centric, especially since we're transitioning into AI. I feel that a lot of people want to use AI as a replacement for people, where it, in our reality, it should be something different. We should be using it to enhance people and to grow and be even more powerful in what we're trying to become.
Yeah, we're Rodrigo. I will tell you right now, um, if you want to make it going forward 5 to 10 years, in no way, shape, or form is AI. AI will be the smartest person in the room. I mean, it used to be where people were promoted based on their intelligence and they had a lot of experience. Well, now AI can be that intelligence. What it can't replace is the emotional intelligence.
Right.
It can't replace the fact that people are going to need to manage bots and people, agents and people. And so their ability to network, their ability to communicate, their ability to work. I don't think even people anymore are going to be in very vertical organizations where you've got a lot of layers. I
Mhm.
think it's going to be more horizontal. And I know that my gift when I worked in the corporate environment was my ability to leap across different departments. I was able, even though I was in a real estate environment, I was able to reach out to tax. I was able to reach out to human resources. I was able to reach out, all throughout the organization. And I think that's going to be where people are going to need to double down is their ability to network, communicate, articulate well, and be very familiar with change management. So I think if you want to double down right now, double down on the EQ, and the IQ is just something you're just going to have to be proficient at.
I definitely agree with you, especially with the EQ, because I feel like the EQ is what build the relationships. And then when it comes to the AI aspect of things, that just helps you to nurture it even more and enhance it or speed up different ways to build that relationship. Because I a lot of people are fearful. There are people who are fearful of AI, which I can't understand why they are fearful of it. But then there are people who, one, they already are not emotionally people centric, and then they're trying to push AI even further. And I feel like though that group of people are going to be the people who end up losing out even more by not embracing relationships and being people centric in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, I think if you, in fact, I'm working with I think there's some of the top people, quite honestly, in the world in artificial intelligence. And as an advisor working with them, working on working on a software that when we come into companies, we are able to go ahead and look at everybody's job description. And from
Mhm.
that job description, you can tell, and I'm just making this up, 30% of it is repetitive task. And 70% of it is emotional intelligence, and it still needs a personal touch on it. Well,
Right.
when you start to look at and cumulatively put all those repetitive tasks together, well, sure, artificial intelligence can do that. Does it take away the people's jobs? Hopefully, in my world and in your world, because I know we think the same way. What it does, yeah, there might be a 5 to 10% cut in overhead, but however, those people that adapt with AI, they are then going to be able to take their newfound time that they have found because the repetitive part of their job has went away into value creation, whether
Mhm.
that's working with clients, whether that's working on value add type projects, but now they're going to have more time and to do it more efficiently. So the company that I'm advising for and kind of working with, the big piece of where I really kind of come in is, how do we teach people to not fear fear AI? How do we get everybody to have trust, authenticity,
Mhm.
and learn how to have EQ? So I'm with you there.
And I love the fact that you said that, especially in this time and how efficient AI can be in certain places. And AI is not perfect. There are places that AI is excellent, and there are places AI is just totally crap, and you shouldn't even attempt to even try it. But I do like the fact that one, you said that people should be focusing more so on the value part of it versus prioritizing those elements that are repetitive that doesn't even have that value of it. And in that process, I really think that in doing so, that people will be able to kind of step into that 80-20 rule a little better and get more done for their companies and organizations. And that's where I feel that if you actually sit down and engage AI and learn about it, then there you don't have to worry about the fear. And I know like one of the things that I've told many people who are fearful of AI is to sit down for just a week and and while you're doing different tasks and things through that week, write down those tasks that you're doing and look at how many of those tasks that you're repeating on a day-to-day basis, and then allow AI to replace one of those tasks to see if you're comfortable with it so that you can focus on something else.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think for your listeners out there, I would also say, I know many of the people, their companies want them to use Copilot or something like that. I would say, start experimenting a little bit. Start experimenting with the other AI tools.
Mhm.
Perplexity, Gemini. Gemini's really, I mean, it's doing a great job. Perplexity. The thing I like about that is the fact that it really backs up every one of its answers with the resource where it got it from, and so it's really much a fact check type AI tool. But between Perplexity, Gemini, between ChatGPT, between Claude does something very different. And I
Mhm.
will use any one of these, like when I do my newsletter. I don't let it just do my newsletter, but it can write in my voice and it can clean up, 70% of what I've created. And Claude will create tools. And so, Grok. So I would just challenge a lot of your listeners to just get in and play with this stuff. It's all free. You can't break it. And it just gives you, tell it to prepare your meal plan for the week, or do something just to get comfortable with what the different AI sources do and find out it can be a friend, not just an enemy. So, and then of course that transfers into work as well. So you're absolutely right, Rodrigo.
And I love that, especially with just trying them out, because a lot of times we waste time on just watching and strolling through social media. So we can take that same time that we stroll through social media to actually spend 10 minutes learning about a specific platform and see how it can be more beneficial to us.
Well, if I can just interrupt you real quick, I think you're absolutely right. You're 100% right. When I work with clients, again, I told you I have a three-legged stool. One is emotional intelligence. The second is going to be with well-being. And I get into the neuroscience on all these things because I believe that science really dictates a lot about, how all this works. And the
Mhm.
third piece, though, is productivity. And like you said, I just listed off 5 AI tools, and not including Copilot. But also, you look at like, I always say, as a country, we all have digital dementia or digital obesity. I mean, it's just becoming, there is so much coming at us. So when you can use these digital tools to help organize your time, for example, I use Notebook LM a lot. When I've listened to a podcast or I've got a YouTube that's going to be an hour and 20 minutes long, I don't have an hour and 20 minutes. But when I can go ahead and drop it into Notebook LM, and it has artificial intelligence that will A, summarize it, B, let me ask any question that I want, and it will give
Mhm.
me an answer. C, it will let me go ahead and do trying to think of the word I'm looking for, a diagram of kind of breaking it out in pieces I can understand. There are tools out there like that, and so you need to embrace as much technology to help you become more digitally fit versus having the dementia and the obesity that I've been talking about. And there's tools out there. So helping executives get more organized and using AI or using tools to help them is really a key aspect of my practice.
And I love it, and I love the fact that you have your 3, stool process that you take them through. Um, and I kinda wanna dive back into, your productivity aspect of things. Could you kinda define your 2 spectrums of productivity for us, just in case those who are listening don't understand what those, core terms are?
Which one? Were you talking about digital obesity and digital dementia?
Yes.
Yeah. So to me, that's just a consumption of of all. I mean, from the time we wake up, Rodrigo, from the time we go to bed, we are inundated with information. And
Mhm.
again, there are algorithms that are playing against you, not for you. You
Right.
get onto X, you get onto any of the platforms, and boy, you know what? Hey, I like that product. I'm going to keep going. All of a sudden, guess what? That product shows up on your email. That product shows up. Trust me, people know what they're doing when they use AI, and we get so engrossed into the information overload. I want you to realize something. Our brains weigh two and a half, two, roughly 2.5% of our body weight. Very, very little. But they consume over 25 to 30% of our total energy.
Mhm.
And so the more, for the brain being such a small organ, but yet it consumes 20 to 25%. And when you're on Zoom all day, it actually 2x's that energy. And so you think you've been working for 8 hours, you've been working for 12, 13 hours, 14. I mean, what digital stuff is great if it's used properly, but it is literally wearing us out. And so you have to know how to use it. That's why I say we're becoming digitally obese or we're getting digital dementia. And digital dementia is actually a term. And when we have so much digital information overload in our system,
Mhm.
we start to forget more. I mean, we can't recall names. We can't process. Our prefrontal cortex doesn't allow us to, which is the part of the brain that deals with logic. It starts to shut down. So there are a lot of different things. We lose our energy, like I was saying, because we're using an inordinate amount of energy because of what the brain is having to consume in digital resources. So that's kind of what I mean by digital dementia in digital obesity. We're just getting overloaded, and we need to learn how to get fit in that area of our life, no different than our physical well-being, and then our self-awareness.
And I love those 2 terms because of the fact that I feel that many people right now, because we can digitize so much, we've gravitated to make as much of our lifestyles digital as possible. And I know, like, with me, I have this habit where I'm intentional. Like, if I get find a book I want to read, I get it in paper form, and I intentionally go to Barnes& and Nobles to buy that book.
Good for you.
Or I for my planner, at one point, I was doing digital planners while I was writing it out on my iPad, but I intentionally, about 2 years ago, started writing it out, and I was doing research around that, where even with when it comes to writing, certain ink colors help you to remember better than other ink colors for that process, because a lot of times when we're trying to compress all of that information, some of that information go in one ear and basically out of the other because
Yeah.
of the way we're receiving it.
No, you're absolutely right. Yes, and kudos to you for doing things. Again, even when you're journaling, just the ability to take your time. I use a Remarkable, which is a writing device that
Mhm.
feels just like a pencil or a pen, and that way I don't have to have 30 tablets laying around. I can just have one device, but it really truly feels like a pencil, touching paper. And so for me, what it does is it again, the science behind it is of writing is it slows your brain down
Mhm.
because we're typically thinking 15 sentences ahead of what we're writing. And so this is a very intentional way of slowing your brain down to where you can go ahead and kind of start to be present versus having multiple thoughts and kind of being scattered, so to speak. So I agree with you. Congrats to you because I think, the one thing I would tell you that I do as well, because I want to make sure I'm getting the right book. So I will use, I don't know if you've heard of the application Blinkist, Blinkist,
Mhm.
but Blinkist has over 4,000 books in it that you can read one in, it'll condense it into like either audio or you can read it in 5 minutes. From there, then I know that either I like it or I don't like it. And then I can either get it on audiobook or I can, because I walk a lot too, or I work out a lot. Whether you're in a car, just make sure you're using your time wisely. But then if I really like a book, then yeah, it's going hard copy because you want to dog ear, you want to mark it up, and you want to refer to it. So there's a lot of different ways to make sure that you're. In fact, I even use AI. If I just say, "Hey, give me a book summary on XYZ,"
Mhm.
typically it knows the book, and I'll get a book summary and decide if I want to read it or not.
I love that. I know my husband probably be like, he hates to see Amazon or Barnes& and Noble packages coming because I'm always ordering books and things like that. And I also try to support, like, other authors that I know who are in the process of publishing things. And I definitely love the fact that you're using that, a Remarkable, because of the process of which it actually works. I love that it uploads it and saves that file for you. And I quick question, like, with Remarkable, are you able to pull forth like the different things that you journal by subject or tabs?
Yeah, so it does have a search on it. So it will go ahead. You can put in a word, and it'll bring up, whatever notebook that I've set up. But I actually download off Etsy. I download calendars for the year, like the 2026 calendar, because there's 1,000 out there. You just have to figure out which one you want. But even though I got a calendar digital, I mean on Gmail, I still go ahead and transfer everything onto this digital planner on Remarkable
Mhm.
because again, it's just the art, like you said, the art of just writing it down. It puts a 2x on being able to memorize and see what your week's going to look like. And so, yeah, I love the Remarkable, and I set up multiple for all my clients. I've got a different notebook for every one of them, so I'm never without my yellow legal pad, and I say that with quotation marks around it because I've always got this Remarkable with me, and I'm not selling any product here. I'm just telling you that it's helped me to be able to journal in the morning, to have my planner with me, to be able to do whatever I want to do, and yet have the sensation of writing. The iPad, which is a glass surface with a glass, that does not have the same feel. That is something very different.
Yeah,
Um,
they have, I forgot the company, but they actually make a paper-like feel for your iPad.
do they? Do
So
they?
yeah, so I bought that for mine because
Oh,
I
good.
often, for my company, because we do graphic designing and I draw my
Okay.
designs out, I bought that because it is better. It doesn't it's like not like the Apple Pencil just sliding across. You can actually feel the friction
That's
as
awesome.
you
I just learned something.
yeah, they only released it's probably I think it's with Papermate, but, is it Papermate or Paper it's 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 Paper something, but I know that, I got it maybe 2 years ago. It hasn't been around long, but they
Yeah.
literally just released it maybe about 2 years ago, and I've liked it. They can be expensive depending on, like, how much you want to put for something on your iPad, but yeah,
Well, fair
that
enough. Yeah, I would. Again, the science is out there of handwriting and journaling and just doing things by pen pencil. But if you can find a device like this that you're comfortable with
mhm,
and it's affordable, then I would say, yeah, latch onto it.
it's paper-like. I had to look
Paper
at
like
yeah, I
is
flipped my iPad over so I can see.
now is that paper like or light? LIGT, or how do you spell that?
It's paper-like, it's Like.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense that they would call it that. Okay, that's good branding on their part.
Yeah, that I thought that too. I was like, let me see what this is. And I actually started using it, but I what I noticed when it comes to it is that if I write it down, I'm going to remember my whole schedule for the week. If I just look at the Google Calendar, I can remember maybe one or two appointments for that week. Eh, So that's why it's better for me to write it down.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And then I think just I always say, tomorrow starts today. Next week starts this week. Next quarter starts this quarter. So to have some kind of a template, which they do, and again, I use one I get off Etsy, but to have one for executives to go ahead and make sure that they plan their week, they plan their month, they plan their quarter. And I do believe, like, all good companies should have quarterly retreats. I believe all good executives should have quarterly retreats. They need to go and say, what did I do? I always have a stop, start, continue. What do I need to stop doing? What do I need to start doing? And what do I need to continue doing? But to
Mhm.
have that time to write it out versus making it digital really does, I think, I think it just helps the whole thinking process.
And I do agree with having those quarterly retreats because what I do at the end of each quarter is I take that week off for a week of reflection. But
Oh,
do
good for
you
you.
also recommend like having buffer days throughout that quarter?
Buffer days to do what?
So when I say a buffer day, maybe a day to kind of reflect on like the past 2 weeks or that month or things like that.
Yeah, well, I tell you what I do is, and I advise a lot of clients to is I use whatever works for everybody, but for me, it's Saturday morning. I just, there's nobody calling. I don't have any emails coming in, but to find a coffee shop and use, an hour to an hour and a half to reflect on the past week, to reflect on the week ahead, to
Mhm.
just make sure that I'm caught up and just make sure that I don't have any outstanding issues. To me, that's pretty important. And then the second piece is, again, and I know you do this with your clients, is telling them to work on the business, not in the business.
Mhm.
And so to be able to calendar your calendar strategically to where you've got whatever you want to call it, CEO time, you know, whatever however you want to block your days. But typically blocking in the morning. Most people's brain waves, their cortisol is high. Their thinking mode is one that morning typically works best for most people to
Mhm.
block off time and to, let's just say, from 8:30 to 10:30. And then of course I'm really big into habits. So I think what you do between, whatever time you wake up, but from 5:30 to 7:30 needs to be you time. And that's a whole nother conversation when we can get into at some point in time. But to make sure you're blocking off time each day and not just jumping into email, not jumping into fire of the moment and to make sure you're working on the business and not just in the business is
Mhm.
absolutely critical. So you say buffer days. I think every day has a little bit of a buffer hour or two. The weekend has a buffer time. To your point, I think it's great that you do sequester yourself on a quarterly basis and really think strategically in using a day or two to do that. So everybody's got to have a system.
Yeah, I laugh because sometimes my friends was like, "You're too analytical," and I tell them I was like, I'm a left brain, so I have to see the big picture. So I literally took part of last week to pre-plan out the whole year for this year on an Excel spreadsheet. So I have like annual things, and I took the annual things and broke them down into quarterly, and then those quarterly things I already have like specific tasks that need to go with them so that I can actually share it with my team so that they'll know the direction for this year. But also to go with what you were saying about that time in the morning, I used I read the book by Robin Sharman, the
5 a.m. club,
hour 5
the 5
a.m.
a.m. club. Yeah,
Yeah, so I actually use that method because he updated it to like a 3-hour block later on. And I switched it and I literally take 2 hours and 30 minutes and use that plan in the morning times, Monday through Friday.
good for you. Because I tell you what, I think his original book, you're right. I think he wanted you to do things in 20-minute increments as far as
Hmm.
getting, physically taking care of yourself, mentally taking care of yourself, spiritually taking care of yourself. 20 minutes is just not enough time because you
It's
start to get
not.
into something. And so, yeah, I think everybody's got to have a system. And if your listeners are looking for another good download, Arthur Brooks is he's a professor of happiness at Harvard, and he just came out with an episode about a month ago on morning habits, and he's got nine. And it's fascinating because there's a whole science again around when to wake up, an hour and a half before the sun comes up, and what it does to the brain. And just this series of things that you need to do. And again, when I do a keynote, I talk about you have to be selfish as a leader. We
Mhm.
have to be selfish in order to be a servant leader. And I've had things happen in my life. My wife, at one point, well, still does, but had when she came down with cancer. All of a sudden, my world is very, very busy. Rodriguez. I had to put myself first before her because if I didn't have the energy to put everything into her, into my business, into the community engagements that I had. So your ability, and I think this is very important. It isn't just a morning routine. Evening routines set up your morning routines.
Mhm.
So having a very strong, and you're analytical, and I would not party with you. Well, you sound so awesome that you can do all that. I'm a little bit more of a feeler. You've got that left brain. I've got that right brain. But I would tell you what, to have that evening routine, to have that weekend routine. I work. I do a lot of leadership training and development, and when I do, we talk a lot about two things. Number one, we talk a lot about habits, your morning habits, your evening habits, your weekend habits, your quarterly habits. But we
Mhm.
also go into a lot of self awareness because what works for me as a right brain may not work for you, Rodrigo, with a left brain. And so to be able to customize how you find recovery and how how you're able to absorb information is probably very different than how I am. And
Mhm.
so for me, it takes more, I have what's called a default mode network, which is really a wild, crazy hamster wheel always going on. And I don't engage my prefrontal cortex enough. And because of that, which is the executive control network. So because of that, in fact, right before we got on the call, I meditated for 10 minutes because I have to slow down.
Mhm.
You, on the other hand, you sound like you've got this really unbelievably bright mind that probably finds recovery different than I do. So anyway, we're all different, I guess is my point.
Yeah, I definitely would say that because but I one of the biggest things that I have learned for those who are left brains and both analytical is that sometimes we don't fully shut off. So
Oh,
we have
yeah.
to be intentional on shutting off when it comes to things. And especially if you're an entrepreneur who has that. But I think the plus side of it is for those who are left brain and analytical, they can work both with scattered brain, with people who don't function in order, but they can also work with linear people, with people who have to go from point A, point B, point C. Because I do notice that a lot of times when you are a right brain person, you either gravitate to one other or the other. You can't function with both type groups of people.
Yeah, well, again, that goes back to that, it takes more energy for
Mhm.
somebody with a right brain to engage the prefrontal cortex. Yours is engaged most of probably 80% of the time anyway. And so, like you said, your ability to recover, I would ask you, what does recovery look like to you, Rodrigo?
Recovery for me is sitting on the couch with my iPad working sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Is transitioning from one space to another space where it really doesn't feel like work. Um, for me. So it's like it may not like if I'm sitting in front of my computer and I'm working, I definitely know I'm focused on everything that's going on in that space. But if I shift to like the couch, I have like this back massager I can put on the couch, sit on the couch, and have my feet propped up with my iPad in my lap, and I could be working on something else. So a lot of times that's when I do like my graphic design work and things like that. I'm still doing work, but it doesn't seem like work.
It's stroking your dopamine, though, your dopamine and your serotonin, because your dopamine is different. Yeah, so that's why I say your recovery looks different to mine. I mean, mine might be going out and watching, a ball game or something like that. But I will say, when I talked about Saturday morning planning, because one
Mhm.
of my strengths in Strength Finders is focus. That's a dopamine hit for me. When I can sit and just plan, that is a dopamine hit for me. But doing, day, in fact, talking to you right now because I'm an extrovert. This is a dopamine hit. But when we get off of here and then I start getting into deep focus work, that's going to take a lot of energy. And that's why, we're all wired differently, which is why I love working with clients because you got to get the self awareness right
Mhm.
so that you can then start to diagnose how everybody needs to, especially not just from an individual standpoint, from a team standpoint. Because once you understand somebody's strengths, that same strength becomes their kryptonite. And when you understand somebody else's kryptonite, you realize, oh, now I see that, maybe they don't have enough sleep. Maybe they're not eating well. Maybe there's something going wrong at home. And they aren't mad at me. There's just something going on. But once you understand that,
Mhm.
then all of a sudden you can start to have a more healthy team environment. So anyway, I just love the whole science of self-awareness and team awareness.
And I think that's essential too because what I tell people to do is sit back and take a SWOT analysis of yourself. And once you
Yeah.
take a SWOT analysis of yourself, you'll know what works best for you and how you can connect better with other people. Because then you'll be able to say, okay, I'm not good at this, or I have a tendency to talk to people this way. So that may not work with this person because this person is this way.
No, I agree with you. In the SWOT, yeah, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I think I, I I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's a great way to go ahead and approach. And again, that activates that prefrontal cortex. That activates that thinking zone to where you can kind of logically put it together, as opposed to the extrovert or the right brain person who's just is sitting there with a hamster wheel trying to figure things out.
Also, well, Stan, it was great having you on this show today. And for our audience, those who want to connect with you more and talk to you more, especially about productivity and being people centric, and even getting to know who they are as a person, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. So two things. Number one, you can always buy my book, which is Living a Rich and Intentional Life. It's on Amazon. Never let a good pandemic go to waste. I wrote a book about all this fun stuff that we're talking about today during the pandemic. But the second thing is go to leadwithstan.com,
Yep.
leadwithstan.com. And what that will do, that's not my website, but that is a URL that you can leave your name and again, I'm just a friendly person. I just like to talk to people, see what's up. Not going to sell anything, but if you go to leadwithstan.com, you'll get two things. You'll get a double down with you tool that I have that helps people see the neuroscience around living healthy, physically healthy. And the
Mhm.
second thing you'll do is you'll also get uh, a from chaos to clarity assessment. Take you all of 10 minutes just to see, am I in chaos or am I in clarity, red, yellow, or green? And so you get those two assessments, and that can maybe help you just say, here's a couple of tools that might help me along my leadership journey.
Awesome. Well, Stan, thank you again for being a part of our show. And to our audience and listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Enrich Your Business Circle. I'm your host, Rick Bennett, and see you again on our next episode.